The hospital was supposed to be empty after midnight. That was what they told her. That was what she believed. But on her very first night shift, Nurse Maya heard footsteps in the room where the patient had died 3 hours ago. And when she slowly pushed open the door, the dead man was sitting up in bed, staring straight at her, smiling. If this story already has your heart racing, you are not alone. Like this story, share it with someone brave enough to read it at night, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a nightmare. Trust us, you are going to want to stay close. Maya had only been a nurse for 6 months. She was 23 years old, quiet, careful, and good at her job. She liked helping people. She liked the feeling of doing something that mattered. When her supervisor told her she was being moved to the night shift at Greystone General Hospital, Maya told herself it was just another step forward in her career. She smiled and said she was ready. But deep down, something inside her felt uneasy in a way she could not explain. Greystone General was an old building on the edge of the city. It had been built in the 1940s, and parts of it still looked like they belonged to that time. The floors were made of pale stone that echoed every footstep. The lights in the older wings flickered sometimes for no reason. The walls were painted a dull, yellowish white that made everything look sick under the fluorescent lights. Nurses who had worked there for years said the place had a feeling to it after dark. They never said exactly what kind of feeling. They just said you would know it when you felt it. Maya arrived for her first night shift at 11 in the evening. The day shift nurses handed over their notes and left quickly, like they were happy to go. One older nurse, a woman named Dolores with gray streaks in her hair and tired eyes, stopped at the door and looked back at Maya. She said only 2 things. She said, "Stay out of Ward 7. Then she said, "And whatever you hear, do not open any door unless you have turned on the light first." Before Maya could ask what she meant, Dolores was gone. Ward 7 was at the far end of the East Wing. Maya checked her patient list and saw that none of her assigned patients were there. She told herself she had no reason to go near it anyway. She focused on her rounds. She checked on an elderly man named Mr. Hale in room 12 who had a heart condition. She checked on a teenage boy in room 15 who had been in a road accident and was sleeping soundly. She checked on a woman in room 9 who kept asking for her daughter even though her daughter had not visited in days. Maya held her hand and spoke softly until the woman fell asleep. By 1 in the morning, the hospital felt very different. The noise of the city outside faded away. The hallways became longer somehow. The shadows in the corners of rooms seemed thicker. Maya told herself this was normal. She told herself all old hospitals felt like this at night. She drank her coffee at the nurse's station and kept her eyes on her paperwork. Then the monitor in room 12 made a long, flat sound. Mr. Hale's heart had stopped. Maya ran. She called the code team. Doctors and nurses rushed in and worked on Mr. Hale for 20 minutes. But it was not enough. At 1:47 in the morning, Mr. Hale was declared dead. The team covered him with a sheet and left quietly. Maya stood in the doorway for a moment. She felt sad in the way you feel sad when you see something gentle leave the world. She turned off the main light and walked away, leaving only the small lamp above the bed glowing softly. She returned to the nurse's station. She had barely sat down when she heard it. A slow, rhythmic sound coming from room 12. A sound like bare feet pressing slowly against a stone floor. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. Maya stood up. She told herself she had imagined it. Old hospitals made sounds. Pipes knocked and floors settled and wind found its way through old windows. She sat back down. Then she heard something else. A voice. Low and rough, like someone who had not spoken in a very long time. It said her name. It said, Maya. She stood completely still. Every part of her body went cold. She could feel her pulse in her throat. She told herself that she had misheard. She told herself that sounds in old buildings played tricks. She picked up her flashlight and walked slowly toward room 12. She stopped outside the door. The small light inside the room was still on. She could see the thin strip of light beneath the door, and she could see something else beneath that door. 2 shadows, in the shape of feet, standing just on the other side. Maya remembered what Dolores had said. "Do not open any door unless you have turned on the light first." The light inside was already on. That meant nothing was hidden. That meant she could open the door. She told herself that. She reached for the handle. She pushed it open. And the dead man, Mr. Hale, was sitting up in his bed with the sheet pulled around his waist. His eyes were open. His head was turned directly toward her, and he was smiling with a mouth that was open just slightly too wide. Maya did not scream. Say, wanted to. Every instinct in her body told her to turn and run and never stop running. But her legs would not move. She stood in the doorway of room 12 and stared at the thing sitting in Mr. Hale's bed. Because she could already feel it. Whatever it was in that bed was wearing Mr. Hale's face. But it was not Mr. Hale. It tilted its head to one side. The movement was slow and wrong, like a machine that had forgotten how human necks were supposed to work. Then it spoke again. The voice came out rough and layered, like two voices pressed on top of each other. It said, "You should not have come here tonight, Maya." Then it smiled wider. Much wider than any human mouth could go. Maya stepped back. Her shoulder hit the doorframe. The thing in the bed did not move from the bed. It just watched her. Its eyes did not blink. She pulled the door shut and pressed her back against the wall in the hallway. She pulled out her radio and tried to call the charge nurse on duty. Nothing came through but static. She tried her phone. No signal. Greystone General's East Wing had always had poor signal, but she had never felt so completely alone because of it. Until that moment, she needed to reach the main nurses' station at the other end of the building. She needed to find another person. She needed to not be alone. She started walking fast down the hallway, keeping her eyes forward and her flashlight on. The corridor stretched ahead of her. The lights above flickered once, twice. Then 3 of them went out together, leaving a long stretch of darkness between her and the other end of the hall. Maya kept walking. She passed room 13. She passed room 14. Then she stopped. Room 15, the teenage boy from the road accident. She had checked on him less than an hour ago, and he had been sleeping peacefully. But now the door to his room was open. And through the open door, his bed was empty. She stepped inside. The sheet was folded back neatly. The pillow had a small indent where his head had been. There were no signs of distress. It was as if he had simply stood up and walked away. She turned slowly, and she saw the words written on the wall above the door. They were written in something dark. They said, Ward 7. And beneath the words was an arrow pointing toward the East Wing. Maya understood then that whatever was happening in this hospital was pulling her somewhere. It had started with Mr. Hale. Now it had taken the boy. She could go to the main station and find help. Or she could go to Ward 7 and find out what she was dealing with before it was too late to help anyone. She thought about the boy. He was 16. He had been in an accident. He was scared and hurt, and somewhere in this building alone. She could not leave him. She walked to Ward 7. The doors to the ward were old wooden doors with circular windows at eye level. She looked through the glass before she entered. The ward beyond was dark except for a pale blue light coming from the far end. She pushed the doors open and went in. The smell hit her immediately. Old and cold and wrong. Like something had been sealed in this ward for a very long time. There were 6 beds in the room, 3 on each side. 5 of them were empty. In the 6th bed, at the far end beneath the blue light, was the boy. He was lying on his back, completely still, his eyes wide open and staring at the ceiling. Maya ran to him. She touched his arm. He was cold. She shook him gently and said his name. His head turned slowly toward her, his eyes focused. He blinked, then he grabbed her wrist so tightly it hurt, and he said in a voice that was not quite his own, "She's been waiting in here since 1962. She's so happy you finally came." The doors behind Maya slammed shut. Every light in Ward 7 went out at once, and from the darkness around her came a sound she would never be able to describe to anyone, a long breathing sound that came from everywhere. At the same time, from the walls and the ceiling and the floor and from right behind her ear, and a voice, cold and old and patient and deeply satisfied. It whispered, "I needed someone who cares too much to walk away. I always find one, eventually. Welcome to the night shift, Maya. You will not be leaving." The morning team arrived at 7. They found the nurses' station empty, and Maya's coffee still warm. Her badge was on the floor outside Ward 7. The ward was locked. When they finally got the doors open, the room was completely empty. All 6 beds were made with fresh sheets. There was no sign of Maya, or the boy, or anyone else. But on the wall above bed 6, written in something dark, were 2 words. They said, "Thank you." Maya's locker was cleaned out 3 days later, but the night nurse who did it said she found one thing they could not explain. A fresh cup of coffee, still warm, sitting inside, and on the cup, in handwriting no one recognized, were the words, "My shift never ends."